Welcome back, everyone, to another powerful conversation in our self-care series. Today, we're diving into a topic that touches every woman, but is still like draped in silence: menopause. So whether you're approaching it, in it, or supporting someone through it, I think this is part of life we can't afford to keep quiet anymore. I think it's something we have to figure out how to have conversations about. And my guest today, Miss Anita Powell, has made it her mission to break that silence, especially for Black women, by educating, advocating, and making sure we have the tools to care for ourselves during this, I don't even want to say transition, but this thing in life that we have to navigate. So let's get into what it is, why this conversation matters, and how you can show up for yourselves and others in this season of life. But first, we'll hear from Miss Anita. If you could tell us a little bit about you, and welcome.
Well, hi, my name's Anita Powell, and I'm actually a community worker in England. And I'm a menopause advocate, but I also work for a mental health organisation as well. So I do loads of stuff around getting people to talk about their mental health as
Oh,
well.
lovely. Yeah, and if you hear the accent, didn't catch it, yes, she's from across the pond, honey. So we are having international conversations, which I love. And I also just love that it doesn't really matter where we are, that we really value all the women in our lives and we try to get as much information and support to them as much as possible. So I really appreciate the work that you're doing, Anita, and that you're a part of this conversation. Thank you so much. And we'll just kind of jump right into it. So for those who might not be sure or maybe have had mixed messages or heard mixed messages, can you start by breaking down the difference between perimenopause and menopause for us?
Okay, so perimenopause is when there is a decline of your hormones, such as your estrogen, progesterone, and for some women, it's also a decline in testosterone. I mean, other stuff goes on as well, but those are the key female hormones that contribute to what we call menopause. Now, menopause is when your monthly um, your monthly bleed stops for exactly 12 months. If it stops for 3 months or 6 months and then starts again, you have to start again once you stop bleeding. So it has to be 12 months with no period. And then after you've had 12 months with no period, menopause lasts for just 24 hours. It's just one day. And then after that day, you're postmenopausal.
Wow, so many things I didn't even know in just that one little
Yeah.
blip there, right? And I think just like the time frame around it, which is so interesting and I guess helpful as well. So it's really sort of understanding your body where it is and just like the timing of things. And I guess in that same space, what are some of the like early and less obvious symptoms that women should watch out for?
So I've got, I mean, first of all, the first thing to understand about the hormones is our female hormones are in everything. They affect our skin, our joints, they affect everything. So when there's a decline, that's what can contribute to all these effects because our female hormones are really important for everything to do with us as women.
Mhm.
Um, so the decline can cause, and the decline happens during the perimenopause stage, and the perimenopause stage can vary per woman. So some women it's only a few years, maybe about 5 years. Some women it could be 10 years, and it's all about the decline. So within the perimenopause, you can still fall pregnant, but you're less fertile. So you still have periods and everything, and sometimes during perimenopause, your periods can become heavier. There's a presumption that because you're coming to the end of your fertility that will become
Mhm.
lighter. But
Mhm.
actually, one of the problems women suffer with is that they get heavier periods to the point where it may affect their ability to go to work, that degree of heaviness. So then you need to go to your GP to talk to your GP about how to handle heavy periods. But there could be loads of things because hormones affect all parts of your body.
Right.
It can, you get hot and cold flushes because that's connected to your, oh my, see my menopausal brain, the vas motor. Oh, I won't even use the word because my brain has forgotten it. This is the problem with menopause because it
Uh-huh.
can affect your
No, that's
memory.
another one too, right? The memory loss. I hear them talk about it too, like the brain fog kind of thing, where it's
Yes,
hard to
brain
pull
fog.
information.
Yeah,
Yeah,
the
yeah.
hot and cold flashes,
Hmm.
tiredness,
Hmm.
sleeplessness,
Yeah,
grumpiness, anxiety. You can become
yeah.
emotional, achy joints. I mean, there's a list. The lists vary from different organisations, but the list roughly is around 40 plus.
Which is crazy because I think the only
Yeah.
thing we think about is maybe just like the hot flashes part. So I think when if you don't experience that, you kind of assume like, then this isn't it. Or we kind of attribute it to other things. Because even when I hear you say anxiety, like from a mental health standpoint, I feel like we might just think like that's what I'm dealing with and it's an emotional thing. Even though at the same time, even with anxiety, it is like a chemical aspect to it too. So I could see where it's linked to the body and hormones, but it's kind of stepping back and taking this larger picture of what else could be going on because it could be a symptom of something else.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. And
Um, Sorry, go ahead.
it's also something to remember as well that even because I'm not a medical person, I should say this first. I'm not a medical person. Sometimes the anxiety comes because of the fluctuation of your hormones and whatever. Sometimes the anxiety comes because you're going through a different stage of your life. So the hormonal fluctuation, that's when you need to go to a doctor and consider possibly taking hormone replacement therapy, which then lifts the level of your hormone levels. But sometimes it's anxiety in relation to you don't like being older. You don't,
Mhm.
you don't
The
want to have.
changes in itself, or what we're
Yes,
thinking about, what we don't want to get to. It's
yes,
like, oh my God, is this it? Right? Like that, that's the
yes.
whole thing in
'Cause
itself.
So if it's a change in that way, sometimes that's when you need an element of talk therapy, whether it's talking to your friends, your family, or whether you go to a professional. You don't
Mhm.
necessarily have to take medication because anxiety is
Mhm.
caused by your response to changing rather than a
Right.
hormonal response. If that makes, even though there is a hormonal response, it's not a, some people, the decline in hormone can potentially, the worst case scenario, they develop symptoms which are clearly like disabling. They can't go to work, they can't, they sleep, they cry all the time, they're totally disabled. And sometimes you do need medication to just kind of increase the level of hormones. But some people actually, good talking therapy, good friends to talk to can kind of correct that anxiety level.
So you know, I feel like this is the element of like self-care in itself too, because it isn't like this is like a life sentence, totally like negative thing, right? It's like depending on how your body reacts to it, you can kind of counterbalance it with good care. If that is making sure you're spending time in relationships with people, doing things that feel good to you, if you do need to engage in talk therapy as well to help you find that balance again.
I mean, yes, I mean, very often when you go through that particular stage in your life, it does affect women differently. Age, one thing I've learned about menopause is
Mhm.
aging affects women differently.
Tell us
And
more. Mhm.
so some people just challenge of aging causes them anxiety. Just that just the fact that they no longer look 20, that to them is the height of their kind of older symptoms. I generally find with black women and Asian women, because I actually work with different communities, which is beneficial because I can see how they react differently. That when it comes to black women, we age well. So aging isn't so much a major issue, I find, compared to Caucasian or white women, who the effects of menopause can have a bigger effect in their skin because it speeds up aging. Their skin becomes skin, their lips, and things like that. That's when it starts to show aging when you see lines. 'Cause that's reduced collagen. Whereas black people, we age better. So menopause and aging can affect people in so many ways. And there's plastic surgery business. They make a lot of money out of a name that they've created called menopause face. And there's things like Botox
Are they
and
making money off of our stress and distress?
yes, they are. Yeah, but there's a category called menopause face, and that's about dealing with the look of aging. And they call it menopause face, and it includes Botox and all that stuff.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I guess it again speaks to like the emotional element of this too, right? And maybe menopause is like part of the story because we're really looking at kind of like our identity then as women, right? Because it's all this stuff that's happening within us, which is something to navigate, and then
Mm.
outside. And I think I'm hearing you say just depending on what the symptoms are, like it can trigger other things. So as like women of color, as Black women in particular, we may have an advantage because physically we age better, so we may not have that angst. But if it's starting to show on your face and in your body, it may trigger other things too.
I think with regards to aging, we
Mhm.
clearly have an advantage.
Advantage.
Because I find in other ethnic spaces,
Mhm.
the aging thing, like on your skin, is such a major topic. Whereas in black spaces, it's more the conversation around hair rather than skin.
Mm,
Whereas I
mm,
don't hear white women complain so much about hair unless it's thinning, and that's
right.
a hormonal decline. But so I find that black women talk about hair more than their aging skin.
Are there connections to hair loss and menopause too? I guess even in this like hormonal shift kind of space?
Yes. So, as I said, I'm not an expert with regards to is it trichology and dermatology and things like that.
Yeah.
So, the way that menopause can have an impact on the hair, from what I understand, so sometimes it's dermatological because one of the ways that menopause can affect women is by their skin. So, a lot of women, when they become menopausal, develop itchy skin.
Mm,
And if it affects your scalp, anyone who's ever had an itchy scalp
mhm,
knows not only is it irritating, sometimes it affects hair growth. Yeah, because if you have a healthy scalp, that's easier for the hair to come out and whatever. So
mhm,
sometimes women can just develop itchy skin, which could go into the scalp of their hair, and that can affect growth.
mhm.
Also, the fluctuation of hormones, and this is what I understand, and as I say, I'm not medical. Sometimes the fluctuation of hormones can have an impact on you. So I don't quite understand it, but I know sometimes that if your estrogen and progesterone drop, but you've got very high testosterone, because your testosterone hasn't dropped, then
Mhm.
sometimes it can have effect similar to what happens with men. So sometimes the hormone decline can affect your hair growth, and if you look at older women,
Yeah.
white, black, or Asian, their hair starts to thin
Right.
normally connected to their hormones, and it could be connected to in hormone the imbalances rather than just a decline of hormones. So that's
Yeah.
why you need to go to a hormone expert or a dermatologist to look
Right.
whether it's a skin issue or whether it's, and they will also assess if it's a hormone issue as well.
Mm. Yeah, I mean, I think what I'm hearing, which is like important to emphasize, is to follow up like with a medical professional. And I think why I still love conversations like this is because we don't always think about like these two things are connected to each other, that like really there's this chemical change that's happening at every phase in your life and it has like consequent reactions, and what you're experiencing may not be like a bad thing or a scary thing or a thing we just kind of push through. It's something that's worth exploring. And that also brings me around to why is this so, I don't know if it's hard for us to talk about, but why do you think menopause is still such a like a taboo or under discussed topic, particularly for like communities of color?
I mean, I think there are many reasons with regards to the lack of conversation.
Mm,
Even though it's not, this is my interpretation of this, first of all. So I've done some research into this. The average age for menopause, it can vary ethnically wise. So I think the average age for a black American is around, my brain's gone blank now, 48. Yeah. Caucasians or white people, European origin, is 51. And Southeast Asian, it's something like 47 to 48. So there are internal differences with regards to hormones, which produce a different average age to go through the menopause. Now, if you look back quite a few, many hundreds of years ago, some of our communities didn't live much beyond our 50s. And we didn't live much beyond our 50s for a very long time. So some communities have only in the past few hundred years lived beyond 50s. So I think sometimes menopause has been under discussed simply because it was related to end of life, and then you just died in your early 50s, so you didn't even get to menopause. You might have got through a stage of perimenopause, and that's it. So I think there are elements of history where it was an issue because they didn't really understand it, and it didn't last very long, and they related it to end of life. So that's one thing. I think the second thing is, and this is worldwide, that medicine is dominated by men, and men are they dominate the conversation of health because they do the research. So they research their own bodies because they feel it. They do research around things which affect them. And older women in most societies have always had less value. So the symptoms of aging on women didn't really value much to them, because men kind of feel that once a woman is not fertile, they can get a younger woman, you know. And yeah, I know. And the only part of women's health which has been heavily researched really is about having children, because we have their children. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
it's such an interesting dynamic, right? And like we're hearing that elements of that is still relevant. And I'm wondering if that kind of plays into how you got into this space, in terms of how passionate you are about advocating in this space. Like, what in your own journey got you to this point?
I mean, as a community worker, I work in spaces where I support people who are struggling for whatever reason. So I work for community organisations where I support people who are struggling. And I noticed that when I was working with older women, that the conversation around getting back into work, or handling their mental health, often there was a medical element to it. And the conversations of women in their late 40s is very different than women in their late 30s. In their late 30s, they're talking about having babies, they're still career orientated, and they're looking for that partner if they haven't found it, blah, blah, blah. And then late 40s is, oh, I don't like my husband. Or, oh, I'm aching. Oh, I hate my job. And I noticed that the conversation between 30s and 40s totally changed. And that was with my peers and with people I work with. And then I think I went to a TED talk in England, where it was led by a really important um, fertility expert, who talks about the importance of knowing your mother and your grandmother's menopause, because it's an indicator to your fertility, because there is you can inherit your fertility pattern. Yeah. So if you belong to a family that's their periods start young and their periods end young, then biologically you, as a family inherited behavior, your family could go into early menopause, but there is nothing wrong with it. That's inherited. But also it could be the other way as well. So yeah, and then after that conversation, I thought, oh, I'm going to do some research on it. So that's where it came about. Now, as part of doing Black menopause, because I also look at menopause from my perspective, once I looked at like healthcare and support with regards to women, it shocked me about the different outcomes of Black women, white women, and Asian women. It shocked me about the different conversations that were being held. And it shocked me about the levels of engagement. And also, I was a Black woman in a space dominated by white women. And I started talking about menopause about 5 years ago, which was actually quite early with regards to the conversation of menopause. And I was in spaces dominated by white, university educated women. And I found that they dismissed conversations around different communities.
Yeah,
Um, and I also discovered it's not just menopause, it's all health issues. It's
yeah,
their narrative is dominant. But
yeah,
also, what I discovered when I was doing research is that science and medicine, and this is because it's predominantly driven by European men,
yeah,
there's an assumption that when it comes to medicine, no matter the color of your skin or your features or where you come from, inside we're the same. But
yes,
actually, if you look at the outside, we have different bone structure, different coloring. We could,
uh-huh,
have different height in relation to ethnicity, and sometimes there are internal differences. But as the medical community don't care. So when they do research around HRT and other medical researches, they don't take into account sometimes that there are internal biological differences which may affect the outcome of the medicine, because they presume, even if it's not an American company or a British company or European country, they presume their default client is white and European. And
absolutely,
yeah,
yeah. It makes a difference, right, in terms of like those subtle differences within our bodies that, um, well, I'm going to say within our bodies, and then also like externally as well, because when we talk about health, we're also talking about like the socioeconomic things that impact us too. And we make assumptions there too, right? Down to like access of care or information. But we're still navigating these spaces where like we're not even acknowledging that yet, right? So the internal differences we're not acknowledging,
mm,
external stressors that
mm,
may be different for Black women, for other
yeah,
minority groups too, that's still huge, right
yeah,
down to this is why we don't even hear these conversations, because like we're saying, it's still very much a like male dominated, and not as melanated type of space.
Mm.
And this makes me think about like knowing this, like, what can we do as women, right? So what are some concrete steps that women can take to advocate for their needs with doctors, at work, at home? How do we do that?
Well, first of all, we have to learn, or not so much learn, we have to feel comfortable saying the word menopause. It's been a taboo topic.
I love
So
that.
let's,
Everybody listening, say it 5 times. Menopause, 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 menopause.
yeah. So very often, I mean, when I first started out, if you said the word menopause, it would clear a room. That people felt really uncomfortable, male and female. So even though it has changed over the past few years, it's just feel comfortable and talk to your family, talk to your peers, um, just talk and you listen as well because you learn from other people's experience. Everyone's experience is different because our bodies are different. And also what works for one person might not work for another. I mean, I mentioned testosterone. Some women go through a decline of testosterone during menopause. Some women don't. If they go through a decline in testosterone, it very often affects their energy levels and their libido. Yeah, so you might need to get testosterone from your doctor to increase your energy levels and your libido. But some women it doesn't affect. And like if you have polycystic ovaries, which is a high level of androgen hormones, then you have different symptoms around menopause. But you definitely can't take testosterone because your testosterone is too high anyway, if that makes sense. So it's about understanding. You listen to people's experiences, but don't automatically presume that that will be your experience. Another thing around work, you have to be very careful around work. And the reason why you have to be very careful is you don't want your boss to disable you when you tell them you're struggling. And some people have found that if you tell them you're doing this and doing that, and they think, well, you're no use to me then, are you, if you can't do this and can't do that? So it's about having a conversation with a human resource department, even though they can sometimes be problematic, and make them understand it's the benefit of nurturing mature, well-informed, stable women benefits their business. Yeah. And therefore, if they put things in place, they will have higher retention of staff. The productivity level will increase, um, and they will benefit. They will benefit from looking after their staff. So if you promote that, encouraging your workplace to have a menopause policy, encourage your workplace to have somebody there who's done some training about it, so that you can go to them to talk about your struggles, and they'll be compassionate rather than feel that you're not capable to do your job.
Yeah, and I love that, right? It's like if you support women, it just changes things, right? Down to the retention, the quality of care, the quality of work. 'Cause it's not that we don't want to be here and do the things that we need to do, and our body should not dictate or inform like our capacity and our ability. We're just kind of learning to come alongside that and support women. So I love that, and I hope folks are hearing practical and tactical things that they can do. And as we move to wrap this conversation, like what bit of encouragement or what do you want to make sure that you impart on the women listening today?
Self-educate, talk to other
Mhm.
women, read up on
Mm.
menopause, and just engage in a conversation of it. Um, and empower yourself with knowledge. So if you do go to, because sometimes you can go to doctors. I don't know what the doctors are like in America or New York or whatever, but sometimes in England they're not trained and they're not women. So actually, their knowledge is maybe a few hours of training 20 years ago.
One
So
class.
yeah. So sometimes you have to be informed to correct them, because sometimes they dismiss you because they say things. There's a high chance of breast cancer. There's a high, if you're overweight, you can't take medication. Oh, it's not menopause. You're too young.
Mhm.
Or very often the conversation that black women hear is, "Oh, you look strong. You can get over it." It's so you sometimes have to be quite confident in your knowledge by reading up on it and talking to other women.
And I think that's the key, confident in your knowledge, right? So if you feel like it's something that is kind of been unspoken and it's still new for you, it is for me, how can I get that knowledge and start to educate myself and not assume that my provider is going to know? Because I think here in New York, in America in general, I think we may have access to more women providers, but because the conversation is still new, the research is still new in terms of really prioritizing women and furthermore women of color, it's still a space that is misunderstood, right? So I think arming yourself with information, you get to go ask questions. And it was a book I was thinking about, Grown Woman Talk. And I like that book because one of the things she talked about that we don't do, is written by a Black doctor, is we don't have conversations with families. And you mentioned that earlier too, right? Because our medical histories really do matter, right? Around this conversation, around anything like, if it's high blood pressure, cholesterol, what was your fertility experience like? And we don't always pass it on, but that could be the information that makes a difference for generation. So just like we do like family trees, can we start doing like medical trees, right? And I found that so valuable in the book. I'm still working my way through it, but what the things that you said today reminded me of that. So it's educating ourselves so we can have these conversations with our community, but then also within our own families. And if we've missed those opportunities, how do we take it forward to change like the health and well-being of the women who are coming after us?
Well, how? Yeah. Well, it's just about education. It's about talking. It's about, and I think the thing is, I'm in England, you're in America. The reality is, both our healthcare is driven by white men. You know, so even though they sometimes tick boxes by saying we research black women or the black community, it's just ticking a box. So we have to be we have to advocate, and the best way to educate yourself, I think, is to find reliable sources actually on social media. There are doctors, and speakers and people who are quite passionate about the subject who know loads, and sometimes they can give you more information than your doctor.
Yeah, so, so valuable. Oh my goodness, thank you so much. And I feel like it's a conversation that we can keep going, but we won't for today. But it's exactly what we need. And we need more spaces like this where we can talk about things. We can really start to shift the culture of just an invitation to know more. And
Mm,
I just want to invite you guys that are listening to make sure that you share this with at least one woman who needs it. Like, directly send her the link. Don't assume that we have this information, because we don't. And connection, information, I think that's how we continue to grow. That's how we continue to heal. That's how we continue to care for yourself. So we'll make sure to link Anita's information wherever you're hearing this conversation, as well as the rest of the sections in this series, and our resource guide, and our wait list for things that are happening and coming up. And I just hope that it's helped you today and meant something for you today. And again, Anita, thank you so much for your time, your effort, your energies, all that you do to care for women. We appreciate you so much, and we salute you all the way across the ocean, honey. Thank you.
mm.
Take care, everyone.